Ethan Cole had dreamed of leaving Earth since he was a child. But when the transport ship finally landed on the dry red surface of planet Archon, his excitement slowly turned into something heavier, something cold in his chest. The military base stood alone in the desert like a metal fortress, surrounded by high walls, watchtowers, and silence that felt unnatural. This was his first assignment outside Earth, his first real mission. And he had imagined glory, action, maybe even danger, but he had not imagined fear in the eyes of other soldiers. As he stepped off the ship with his small bag over his shoulder, he noticed something strange. No one was laughing. No one was shouting orders loudly. Conversations were short and quiet, and when he asked one soldier where he should report, the man only pointed toward the Central Command building without meeting his eyes. Inside the base, the air felt tense. Screens showed security feeds from every corner. Guards stood at every hallway, and heavy metal doors separated different sections like layers of protection around something important. Ethan told himself this must be normal for an alien world. But deep inside he knew this was different. Something was wrong here when he finally stood in front of Commander Hayes. A tall woman with sharp eyes and a calm but tired face. She studied him for a long moment before. "Speaking, Private Ethan Cole. First deployment, correct?" she asked. He nodded proudly, trying to stand straight. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. She looked at his file on her tablet and gave a small sigh. "You arrived at a very unusual time," she said quietly. Ethan expected a speech about responsibility or honor, but instead she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Tonight, you will be assigned to Chamber 7, she said. The room suddenly felt colder. Two officers standing near the wall exchanged quick glances. One of them almost looked sorry for him. Ethan frowned slightly. "What is in Chamber 7, ma'am?" he asked. Commander Hayes paused for just 1 second before answering. "The Alien Queen." The words hit him harder than he expected. Every child on Earth knew about the war with the Arconian Empire. They were taller, stronger, faster, and their technology was far beyond human science. The war had lasted only 8 months, but those months changed history forever. Humanity had survived, barely, and a fragile ceasefire had followed. No one knew the full details, but rumors said the Queen herself had ordered the retreat of her fleets. Some called her a monster, others called her the reason Earth still existed. Ethan swallowed slowly. "I am guarding her," he asked, hoping he misunderstood. Commander Hayes nodded once. "Alone," she added. The word echoed in his head, alone. With the most powerful alien in the galaxy, he felt his heartbeat grow louder in his ears. "Ma'am, with respect, I just arrived," he said carefully. She gave him a look that ended the discussion. "Exactly," she replied. "You have no history here, no anger, no personal loss from the war. You are neutral. That is what we need tonight." As he left the command room, whispers followed him down the hallway. One soldier muttered, "Poor kid." Another said, "Doesn't know." Ethan pretended not to hear, but his hand was slightly shaking. He stopped one older sergeant near the elevator. "Sir, what happened to the last guard?" he asked quietly. The sergeant looked at him for a long second before answering. "He requested transfer after one night," he said. "Wouldn't say why." Then he stepped into another corridor and disappeared. The elevator moved down to the lowest level of the base. Each floor passed slowly. The deeper he went, the thicker the walls became. The final level required 3 security checks and a retinal scan. When the last door opened, a long metal hallway stretched in front of him. At the end stood a single reinforced door marked Chamber 7. 2 heavy armed guards stood outside. They looked at him with unreadable expressions. One of them handed him a small device. "Panic trigger," the guard said. "If anything feels wrong, press it." Ethan nodded, though he was not sure it would help if the Queen truly decided to attack. The guard stepped aside. The large door opened with a slow mechanical sound. Ethan took one deep breath and walked inside. The chamber was surprisingly simple, a wide open room with soft blue light glowing from the walls. No chains, no cages, just space. And in the center of the room, standing near a tall, transparent window that showed the dark desert outside, was her. The alien queen was taller than any human woman, her blue skin shining softly under the light. Her long silver hair fell down her back, and her posture was calm, powerful, controlled. She did not look like a prisoner. She looked like someone who allowed herself to be here, as the door closed behind Ethan with a heavy metallic sound, sealing him inside. She slowly turned toward him, her golden eyes locked onto his face, studying him, measuring him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt alive, heavy, waiting. Ethan forced himself to stand straight, remembering his training, remembering that he was a soldier of Earth, representing all of humanity in this room. The Queen tilted her head slightly, almost curious, and a faint, unreadable smile touched her lips. And in that quiet chamber, on his very first night at the base, Ethan realized this was not simple guard duty. This was something far bigger, something that could change the future of two worlds. If you enjoy powerful HFY sci-fi stories like this, gently consider subscribing to the channel so you do not miss what happens next. The silence inside Chamber 7 did not break quickly, and that silence itself began to feel like a test. Ethan stood near the door with his rifle held properly, but not raised, trying to remember every rule from his training. Do not show fear, do not show aggression unless necessary. Maintain eye contact, but do not challenge. The alien queen watched him without blinking, her golden eyes calm and deep like they could see every thought inside his mind. She slowly walked toward the center of the room, each step controlled and graceful, her height and presence making the chamber feel smaller. Yet she did not move like a prisoner. She moved like a ruler observing her territory. Ethan had expected anger, cold hatred, maybe even threats. After all, her fleets had attacked human cities, her ships had burned colonies in space, and thousands had died during the war. Humans had every reason to hate her, and she had every reason to hate them back. Yet there was no rage in her expression, only curiosity, and that confused him more than fear would have. Finally, she spoke, her voice low, smooth, and strangely calm. "You are young," she said, studying his face. It was not an insult, only an observation. Ethan cleared his throat. "Yes," he answered carefully. His voice sounded small compared to hers, but he forced himself to remain steady. She circled him slowly, not like a predator, but like a scientist studying something rare. "They send the inexperienced to guard me." She continued, "Is that an insult or trust?" Ethan hesitated, then chose honesty. "I think it means they trust me," he said. The Queen stopped walking and looked directly in his eyes again, searching for weakness. "Trust," she repeated softly, as if the word itself was foreign. She moved back toward the window, looking out at the dark desert where two moons were rising in the sky. "Your species uses that word often," she said. "Trust, loyalty, hope, sacrifice. These concepts confuse my people." Ethan felt his heartbeat slow slightly as the tension shifted from danger to conversation. But he did not relax. He remembered the rumors. Guards before him had walked out shaken, disturbed, unable to explain what happened inside this room. He wondered what she had said to them, what she had asked. Without turning around, she asked him suddenly, "Why do humans not fear death the way others do?" The question struck him deeply. He had expected political questions, maybe strategic ones, but not this. He thought about the war footage he had seen during training, human soldiers standing against larger alien warriors, damaged ships, still fighting even while burning, civilians forming rescue lines under attack. He swallowed before answering. "We do fear death," he said slowly, "but we fear losing each other more." The Queen turned slightly, her eyes narrowing with interest. "Explain," she commanded gently. Ethan took a careful breath. "Humans are not the strongest species," he admitted. "We know that, but we survive because we stand together. A soldier will jump into danger to protect a stranger. A parent will give their life for a child. We fight harder when someone depends on us." The Queen was completely still now, listening with full attention. "During the war," she said quietly, "my generals predicted your collapse within weeks. Your nations were divided, your politics unstable, your armies smaller. Yet when we attacked, you became unified." There was no anger in her tone, only something close to respect. "You adapted faster than our models allowed. You used broken weapons, outdated ships, even civilian tools as instruments of war." Ethan felt a strange pride rise in his chest, even in front of the enemy queen. "We protect home," he replied simply. For the first time, Something changed in her expression. Not softness, but reflection. My people are raised to value strength above all, she said. Strength through domination. Strength through control. We believe fear was the greatest weapon. Yet your soldiers did not break when cities fell. They became more dangerous. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as night fully settled outside, and the atmosphere grew heavier again. Ethan realized this conversation was not random. She was not just curious. She was measuring something, testing something. "Tell me, Ethan Cole," she said suddenly, using his full name without being told, which sent a cold wave through his spine. "If ordered, would you kill me tonight?" The question froze the air between them. His finger tightened slightly on his weapon, but he did not raise it. "If you threatened Earth, yes," he answered honestly, "but you are not threatening Earth right now." Her golden eyes studied him again, deeper this time, searching for lies. "You speak without hatred," she observed. "Many humans have reason to hate me." "I did not lose family in the war," he admitted. "But even if I had, killing you here would not bring them back." The Queen turned fully toward him now, her presence powerful but controlled. "Interesting," she whispered almost to herself. "You guard your enemy without rage. You answer without fear. You choose logic over emotion. Yet your species is called emotional." Ethan slowly realized something shocking. She was not evaluating humanity's weakness. She was searching for its strength. Then she spoke words that made his blood run cold. "Tonight, I must decide the future of your world." His heart pounded again. "What does that mean?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She walked closer, stopping only a few steps away from him, her height casting a shadow over him, but not in a threatening way. "There are forces in my empire who believe Earth should be destroyed before it grows stronger," she said calmly. "They fear what humans may become." The room felt smaller with every word. "And you?" Ethan asked quietly, "What do you believe?" The Queen's gaze locked onto his, intense and unreadable. "I believe," she said slowly, "that I require more evidence." Outside the chamber, far beyond the thick metal walls, something heavy moved in the base corridors, but inside, neither of them reacted yet. The real test was not weapons or power. It was this conversation, this silent battle of understanding. And Ethan realized that surviving the night might not depend on strength at all, but on what he chose to say next. The Queen did not step away after saying she needed more evidence. Instead, she slowly walked past Ethan and sat on a raised platform near the center of the chamber. Not like a prisoner waiting for judgment, but like a ruler preparing to reveal history. The blue light reflected softly from her skin, and for a moment, the powerful alien leader looked less like a conqueror and more like someone carrying a heavy memory. Ethan remained standing, unsure if he was allowed to move, but she gestured, lightly with one hand, signaling that he could relax, though he did not lower his guard completely. "You know the version of the war your leaders teach," she began calmly, her golden eyes fixed on him. "But you do not know the hidden truth." Ethan felt a quiet tension build in his chest. Every child on Earth had studied the war in school. The sudden arrival of alien fleets, the destruction of orbital stations, the desperate human defense, the final retreat of the Arconian Empire. It was told as a miracle survival story, humanity standing brave against a stronger enemy. But her tone suggested something deeper, something uncomfortable. "Before the first attack," she continued, "my empire studied your species for many cycles. We observed your broadcasts, your wars among yourselves, your divisions, your greed. We saw a fragmented civilization." She paused slightly. "We believed conquest would be simple." Ethan felt anger rise, but he stayed silent. "Our simulations predicted panic," she said. "We expected your governments to collapse under fear, your armies to surrender when facing superior force. We expected civilians to beg for mercy." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if remembering a mistake. "We were wrong." The chamber felt smaller with every word. "When our first fleet attacked your outer colonies, your response was chaotic, yes, but not broken," she said, Damaged ships rammed into ours rather than retreat. Human engineers modified mining lasers into weapons within hours. Civilian transports returned to rescue soldiers instead of fleeing. Ethan remembered watching recordings of those battles during training, seeing ordinary cargo ships fighting like warships, hearing final messages from captains who refused to abandon their crews. His chest tightened with pride and sadness at the same time. My generals called it desperation. The Queen continued. But I began to see a pattern. She leaned slightly forward, her voice lower now, more personal. You do not fight only for territory, you fight for each other. There was silence for a long moment before she spoke again. And when she did, her voice carried something unexpected, not shame, but reflection. During the Battle of Earth's moon, my flagship had clear line of fire to your planetary defense corps, she revealed. One command from me would have ended your resistance. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. That battle was considered the turning point of the war, when alien forces suddenly pulled back without explanation, saving Earth from total destruction. I gave the order to retreat, she said simply. The words felt heavier than any explosion. Why? Ethan asked quietly, unable to hide his shock. Her golden eyes met his, steady and unashamed. Because I saw something my empire could not understand, she answered. Your defense corps was already failing, yet your soldiers continued to fight outside its walls, knowing it would not survive. They were not defending a weapon. They were defending the people behind it. She stood again, slowly pacing as she spoke. My advisors argued that fear would finally break you once Earth was destroyed. They believed surviving humans would scatter and become weak. But I calculated another outcome. She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could feel the difference in their height and strength. Yet he did not step back. If Earth had fallen, humanity would not have ended, she said. You would have become something far more dangerous, a species with nothing left to lose. The words sent a cold wave through him, because deep inside he knew she was right. So you saved us, he said slowly. I saved my empire from a war without end, she corrected calmly. But I also saved your world. Before Ethan could respond, a sharp alarm suddenly cut through the chamber. Loud and urgent, red lights flashing along the walls. The peaceful blue glow turned into warning crimson. Ethan's training reacted instantly. He raised his weapon and moved toward the door. His heart pounded hard against his ribs. Security breach. A distant voice echoed faintly through the intercom system. The Queen did not appear surprised. Instead, her expression became serious, focused. Your people are divided, she said quietly over the alarm sound. Not all humans agree with my presence here. The heavy metal door at the end of the chamber vibrated slightly, as if something had hit it from the outside. Ethan's breath grew faster. This was no random malfunction. Someone was trying to enter Chamber 7. Who is doing this? He demanded, glancing at her briefly before refocusing on the door. There are those within your species, she replied calmly, who believe killing me will erase the pain of the war. Another loud impact shook the door, dust falling lightly from the ceiling edges. Ethan pressed his communicator, but only static answered him. The base communication lines were jammed. He was alone, truly alone now. The Queen stepped beside him, not behind. Her presence near him felt powerful, controlled, ready. You wished for evidence, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos. It appears your test has begun as well. The final locking bolts on the chamber door began to strain under external force, metal bending slowly. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, realizing the hidden truth of the war was not just about past decisions. It was about what both species would choose tonight. And as the first crack appeared in the reinforced door, he understood that history was about to repeat itself, but this time inside a single room, with two former enemies standing side by side, waiting for whatever came through that door. The crack in the reinforced door spread like a thin line of lightning across the metal surface, and with each heavy from the other side, the entire chamber trembled slightly. Ethan positioned himself directly in front of the Queen without thinking, his rifle raised now, safety off, heart pounding so loud he could almost hear it over the alarm siren. He had trained for combat, for alien battlefields, for open war, but not for betrayal from inside his own base. Not from his own people. The red emergency lights painted the chamber in dark flashes, turning shadows into moving shapes along the walls. "Stand behind me," Ethan said firmly, though he knew how ridiculous it sounded. She was stronger, faster, more dangerous than any human soldier alive, yet he was assigned as her guard, and his instinct told him protection meant standing in front. For a brief second the Queen studied him again, and something almost like approval passed across her face, but she did not move behind him. Instead, she stepped to his side, equal position, her tall figure calm and unshaken. "If they breach," she said quietly, "do not hesitate." The final lock exploded inward with a violent blast, smoke and sparks filling the entrance as 4 armored human soldiers stormed into the chamber with weapons raised. Their uniforms were standard base security, but their visors were blacked out, hiding their faces. Ethan's stomach dropped as he realized this was not an outside attack. This was planned from within. "Step away from the target," one of the intruders shouted, his voice distorted through his helmet speaker. "Private, this does not concern you." "Target," the word made everything clear. They were not here for negotiation, not for arrest. They were here to kill the Queen. Ethan did not lower his weapon. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice shaking slightly but still loud enough. "You are violating command protocol." Another soldier stepped forward, rifle aimed directly at the Queen's chest. "Command is compromised," he replied. "This alien is the reason thousands of humans are dead. We end this tonight." For one small moment, Ethan felt the weight of their anger, the pain of families who lost loved ones, the cities that burned in the sky. He understood their rage. It would be easy to step aside, to let revenge take control, to tell himself justice was being served. But then he remembered her words. If Earth had fallen, humanity would have become something far more dangerous. He tightened his grip and moved slightly to block their line of sight. "She is under Earth protection," he said firmly. You fire on your own soldier first." The tension snapped instantly. One of the intruders fired. The shot struck Ethan's shoulder armor and threw him backward onto the floor. Pain exploded through his arm, his rifle sliding across the metal surface. The Queen reacted faster than human eyes could fully follow. In one fluid motion, she stepped forward, catching the second attacker's weapon and twisting it from his hands as if it weighed nothing. She did not kill him. Instead, she pushed him hard against the wall, knocking the air from his lungs. The chamber became chaos. Muzzle flashes filled the air, bullets striking walls, sparks flying. Ethan forced himself up despite the pain burning in his shoulder. He grabbed his fallen rifle with his good hand and fired precise shots at the attacker's legs, disabling rather than killing. His training screamed at him to aim for center mass, but something inside him refused to turn this into execution. One intruder managed to aim directly at the Queen again, but before he could fire, she moved with terrifying speed, stepping inside his range and disarming him with controlled force. Slamming him onto the ground without crushing his skull, though she easily could have. Within less than 30 seconds, the chamber was silent again, except for heavy breathing and the distant echo of the alarm. The 4 attackers lay injured but alive, weapons scattered across the floor. Ethan leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself, blood slowly soaking through his damaged armor. His arm trembled from pain, but he remained standing. The Queen looked down at the fallen soldiers, then at Ethan. "You did not allow me to kill them," she observed calmly. "They're still human," he replied through clenched teeth. For a moment, her golden eyes studied him in a way that felt deeper than before, not as a scientist, not as a ruler, but as someone reconsidering a belief. "You defend your enemy," she said quietly, "and you spare your own traitors." Footsteps finally thundered down the hallway outside. Loyal base security forces arriving too late to witness the beginning, but just in time to see the aftermath. Commander Hayes rushed into the chamber, her expression frozen in shock as she took in the scene. "Private Cole," she demanded, "report." Ethan straightened despite the pain. "Internal extremist unit attempted assassination," he said clearly, "target secure." The commander's eyes moved to the Queen, who stood tall and unharmed. then back to Ethan's bleeding shoulder. Medical teams rushed in, securing the attackers and stabilizing Ethan. But even as medics worked on him, he kept his eyes on the Queen, expecting anger, expecting rage after being attacked inside a supposed safe zone. Instead, she looked thoughtful, almost distant. As they prepared to escort her out temporarily for safety, she turned slightly toward Ethan and spoke in a voice only he could hear. "You have proven something tonight," she said softly. He tried to respond, but dizziness from blood loss blurred his vision. "Strength is not in destruction," she continued. "It is in control." And as the chamber lights slowly returned from red emergency to calm blue, Ethan realized the betrayal inside the base had done more than expose human anger. It had shown the Queen exactly what she came to see, and the true decision about Earth's future was now closer than ever, but still not fully spoken. The medical team insisted on taking Ethan to the infirmary immediately, but he refused to be fully sedated. He allowed them to seal the wound in his shoulder and wrap it tightly. Yet he remained conscious, his mind still focused on one thing, the Queen's decision. The attack inside Chamber 7 had changed something. He could feel it, not just in the base, but in the air itself, like history had quietly shifted direction. Commander Hayes ordered the entire base in a lockdown while investigators dragged the wounded extremists away in restraints. Their anger had been loud, but now the silence felt even heavier because everyone understood how close they had come to disaster. Ethan was escorted back to a secured observation room connected to Chamber 7, against normal protocol, but the Queen had made a direct request. She wished to continue speaking with him. The commanders hesitated, but after what he had done, after he had shielded her and prevented bloodshed on both sides, they agreed. This time, however, there were guards behind reinforced glass, watching every movement, though none could hear the private conversation inside. The Queen stood near the center of the chamber again, calm as before, as if the assassination attempt had been nothing more than a minor interruption. Ethan stepped inside carefully, his arms stiff but functional, the door sealed behind him once more, and for a brief second the memory of gunfire flashed through his mind, but he pushed it aside. "You are injured because of me," she said quietly, observing the bandage beneath his armor. "I am injured because I made a choice," he corrected gently. She tilted her head slightly, studying not just his words but the tone behind them. "Most leaders in my empire would have responded to that attack with execution," she said, a public demonstration of dominance. Ethan gave a small, tired breath. "That's not how we build peace." The Queen walked slowly around him again, not in threat but in thought. "Peace," she repeated softly. "Your species speaks of it often, yet you are capable of extreme violence." "So are you," he replied honestly. For a moment their eyes locked again, not as enemies, but as equals in understanding a difficult truth. She finally stopped in front of him and spoke words that made the air feel heavier than before. "I did not come to this base as a prisoner," she revealed. "I came as a test." Ethan's pulse quickened slightly. "A test of what?" "A test of humanity's future," she answered. Her golden eyes did not move from his. "My empire faces a threat greater than your world has ever seen." The chamber seemed to grow colder at her words. "There is an ancient force beyond our mapped systems," she continued, her voice steady but serious. "A species older than mine, older than yours. They do not conquer, they erase. Entire star systems disappear when they arrive. No survivors, no negotiations." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Why tell us this?" he asked carefully. "Because we cannot defeat them alone," she said. "My empire is powerful, but predictable. We rely on structure, hierarchy, control. We do not adapt quickly under chaos." She paused, her expression sharpening slightly. "Humans do." He thought about the war again, about broken ships turned into weapons, about civilians fighting beside soldiers, about unity formed in disaster. "You attacked us," he said quietly, "and now you want our help." "Yes," she answered without shame, "because when we fought you, I witnessed something rare." She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly, as if revealing a secret meant only for him. "You do not surrender easily. Even when defeat is certain, You resist. Even when logic suggests retreat, you adapt. Ethan considered her words carefully. And you think that makes us useful? I think it makes you necessary, she corrected. The weight of that word settled deeply inside him. She continued, but my council does not agree. They fear your potential growth. They argue that eliminating Earth now would remove future competition. His jaw tightened slightly. So, tonight was about deciding which path you support. Yes, she confirmed. I needed proof that humanity's strength is guided by principle, not revenge. His mind flashed back to the moment he stood in front of her, to the second he chose to protect instead of step aside. You could have killed them, he said quietly, referring to the attackers. I could have, she agreed calmly. But then your people would see only a monster. And now, he asked, what do you see? She studied him for a long moment, not rushing the answer. I see a species that defends even its enemies when they are under its protection, she said finally. That is not weakness, that is control. Outside the chamber, commanders were already in emergency communication with Earth's leadership, unaware of the full truth being revealed inside. The decision I make will change the direction of two civilizations, the Queen said quietly. If I recommend alliance, my empire will question my judgment. If I recommend destruction, I betray what I have observed. Ethan felt the seriousness of the moment more than ever before. This was not about pride or revenge anymore. It was about survival on a scale far beyond one planet. What do you want? He asked her honestly. For the first time since he entered the base, her answer came without calculation. I want partners, she said softly. Not subjects, not enemies. The chamber remained silent after that, but it was no longer a tense silence. It was the kind that comes before a final choice. And Ethan understood that the real war had never truly been between humans and Arconians. It had been about fear of each other's potential. Now the Queen stood at the edge of a decision that could unite two powerful species against an unseen darkness, or return them to a path of destruction. And whatever she chose next would echo far beyond the walls of this base, far beyond Earth itself, into the unknown depths of space where something ancient was already watching, waiting, and moving closer. The night inside the desert base felt longer than any normal night, as if time itself was waiting for a decision. Outside, the twin moons of Archon moved slowly across the dark sky, casting pale light over the metal walls. Inside Chamber 7, silence returned once more, but it was no longer filled with fear. It was filled with consequence. Ethan stood with his injured shoulder stiff beneath his armor, facing the most powerful being he had ever met. And he understood that whatever happened in the next few minutes would not just affect his career or even his planet. It would shape the balance of power in the galaxy. The Queen walked toward the tall window again, her hands calmly resting behind her back, her posture strong but thoughtful. In my empire, she began quietly, a ruler does not ask for help, a ruler commands. She turned slightly toward him, golden eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. To propose alliance with a former enemy will be seen as weakness. Ethan shook his head slowly. Or it will be seen as intelligence, he replied. His voice was steady now, stronger than before. Choosing the right partner is not weakness. She studied him carefully, measuring the confidence in his tone. Your species continues to surprise me, she said softly. You are physically weaker, your technology is behind ours, your governments are unstable, yet your resilience is unmatched. Ethan allowed himself a small breath. We survive because we have no other choice, he answered simply. The Queen stepped closer, not towering in dominance this time, but standing as an equal presence in the room. You survived our invasion, she said. You survived internal betrayal tonight, and you did so without surrendering to hatred. Her voice lowered slightly, more personal than before. That is what my empire lacks. Ethan felt the importance of her words. You said your people value control and domination, he said carefully. But control without trust creates fear, and fear creates rebellion. She did not respond immediately, but her eyes showed she understood. Far above them in orbit, Arconian warships waited for her signal, hidden beyond human detection systems. They remained silent, prepared for either outcome. If she transmitted a red command code, Earth's defenses would be overwhelmed before sunrise. If she transmitted blue, the first interspecies alliance in galactic history would begin. The ancient force I spoke of, she continued, breaking the silence, has already destroyed 3 outer colonies of my empire. Ethan felt the weight of that revelation press down on him. Why has no one on Earth heard of this? He asked. Because we concealed it, she answered honestly. Admitting vulnerability invites attack. And now you are admitting it to us, he said. Yes, she replied without hesitation. Because your reaction to vulnerability is different. He understood what she meant. Humans did not always respond with conquest. Sometimes they responded with unity, with support, with fierce protection. You believe we would fight beside you, he said slowly. I believe you would fight even if victory was uncertain, she corrected. The room fell quiet again, but this time the silence felt steady, grounded. Your council wants Earth eliminated, Ethan said, wanting to face the truth clearly. They fear your growth, she confirmed. They calculate that in 50 cycles your technology could rival ours, in 100 perhaps surpass. Ethan almost smiled despite the tension. Then maybe working together is smarter than fighting each other. For the first time, the Queen allowed the faintest visible smile to appear, not mocking, not cold, but genuine. You're not a diplomat, she said, yet you speak as one. I am just a soldier, he replied. No, she corrected softly, you are proof. He frowned slightly. Proof of what? Proof that humanity's strength is not chaos, she answered. It is choice. She moved toward the central communication console embedded in the chamber wall, a device connected directly to her flagship in orbit. The final decision waited behind a single command sequence. Ethan's heart began to beat harder again. This was the moment. If you choose alliance, he said quietly, some humans will still hate you. I expect that, she replied calmly. And if you choose destruction, he continued, humans will fight until the last breath. I know, she answered, her hand hovering over the console. The weight of 2 civilizations balanced in that small pause. She turned her head slightly toward him one last time. If my empire and yours unite, there will be resistance on both sides, she warned. There always is, Ethan said, but fear is easier to defeat together. For a long second she looked at him, truly looked at him, not as a subject, not as an enemy, but as a representative of an entire species. Then she pressed the command. Far above the planet, Arconian warships received a single transmission code, blue. The fleets powered down their weapons systems and shifted to diplomatic formation. Inside the chamber, nothing dramatic happened. No explosion, no sound, just a quiet breath from the Queen as if a heavy burden had been lifted. It is done, she said simply. Ethan felt something change in the atmosphere, not visible, not physical, but real. The Council will challenge my decision, she added, but I will stand by it. And Earth, he said, will stand by you. For the first time since he arrived at the base, the tension between them fully dissolved, replaced by something unexpected, respect. The night that began with suspicion, betrayal, and near assassination had ended with a choice that could save billions of lives. 2 former enemies now stood in quiet understanding, aware that a greater war waited in the darkness of space, but also aware that they would not face it alone. And as the first light of dawn began to rise over the desert horizon, Ethan realized that his first assignment had not just tested his courage, it had rewritten the future of 2 worlds. Dawn rose slowly over the desert base, painting the metal walls in soft gold light. And for the first time since Ethan arrived, the air did not feel heavy with tension. It felt uncertain, but hopeful. Inside the command center, emergency alerts had stopped flashing, and new signals began arriving from orbit. Arconian warships shifting into peaceful formation, weapons powered down, shields lowered to neutral status. Human radar operators stared at their screens in disbelief because only ours. Earlier, those same ships had been positioned for possible planetary assault. Now, they waited like silent guardians instead of invaders. In Chamber 7, the Queen stood tall and composed as the reinforced doors opened once again. Commander Hayes entered with several high-ranking officers behind her, their expressions serious but controlled. They had already received confirmation of the Blue Alliance Code, but seeing the Queen standing calmly beside Ethan made the situation real. Not just strategic data on a screen. Ethan's shoulders still hurt, but he forced himself to stand straight, knowing this moment would be recorded in history. Your Majesty, Commander Hayes said carefully, choosing her words with precision, we have received your transmission. The Queen inclined her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Then you understand my decision, she replied calmly. The room remained silent for a long second before Hayes nodded. Earth is prepared to open formal negotiations, she said. Her voice carried both caution and respect. Ethan stepped slightly to the side, no longer just a guard, but somehow part of something larger. The officers behind Hayes looked at him differently now, not with pity as before, but with quiet recognition. They had reviewed the security footage. They knew he had shielded the Queen and prevented both assassination and alien retaliation. His choice had influenced hers. The alliance will not be simple, the Queen continued, her voice steady and powerful. There will be opposition within my council. Some will see this as betrayal. There will be resistance on Earth too, Hayes admitted. Many still carry scars from the war. The Queen's golden eyes moved briefly to Ethan. Scars are proof of survival, she said softly. News of the alliance began spreading across the base, then across Earth within hours. Emergency broadcasts replaced normal programming. Governments announced a historic development. Former enemy fleets now positioned as allies against a greater threat in deep space. Civilian reactions were mixed. Some celebrated. Others protested. Some refused to trust the Arconians at all. Fear and hope moved side by side through human society. Meanwhile, far beyond the solar system, Arconian High Council chambers erupted in intense debate. Several warlords demanded immediate recall of the Queen, accusing her of emotional compromise. Others argued that the unknown ancient force required unconventional strategy. The Empire had never before treated another species as equal partners. The Queen's decision broke centuries of tradition. Back on the base, a private meeting was arranged between Earth leadership and the Queen through secure holographic link. Ethan was unexpectedly summoned to stand in the chamber during the first official exchange. Not as decoration, but as symbol. When he entered, he felt the weight of cameras and history pressing down on him. The Queen addressed both sides clearly. Humanity has demonstrated controlled strength, she declared. They defend even those who once attacked them. They adapt under pressure. They unite under threat. These traits are not weaknesses. They are strategic advantages. Ethan listened in silence, realizing she was not just defending Earth to her empire. She was defending her own choice. After the transmission ended, Commander Hayes approached Ethan privately. You understand what this means, she said quietly. He nodded slowly. It means we are not alone anymore. It also means responsibility, she added. The Queen has formally requested you as liaison ambassador during initial alliance talks. Ethan blinked in surprise. Me? Hayes gave a small nod. She believes you represent the human qualities she values. Across the chamber, the Queen watched him, her expression calm but certain. You stood between revenge and reason, she said when he approached her again. My empire respects strength. Your species has taught me that strength includes restraint. He felt both honored and overwhelmed. I'm just a soldier, he repeated quietly. You are more than that now, she replied. Outside, the sun fully cleared the horizon, light spreading across the desert and reflecting off both human and Arconian ships in orbit. Once enemies, now aligned. Yet even in that hopeful morning, distant sensors detected faint disturbances at the edge of mapped space, gravitational signatures that matched the Queen's warning. The ancient force was still coming, silent and unstoppable, unaware that two former rivals had just united. Ethan looked up at the sky through the chamber window, knowing that the next war would be unlike any before. It would not be human versus alien. It would be survival versus extinction. The Queen stepped beside him, Not as conqueror, not as prisoner, but as partner. "The future will test us both," she said quietly. "We'll be ready," he answered, and as Earth prepared for a new era among the stars, and the Arconian Empire adjusted to a bold new path, one truth became clear. The mission that began as a simple first assignment for a young soldier had transformed into the foundation of a historic alliance. A new beginning for humanity had started not with dominance, not with fear, but with a single choice inside a locked chamber. And this time, when the darkness in space finally arrived, it would not find humanity standing alone.